Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode number, actually, I have no idea what episode number this is, but today we are going to call this episode number 1776. This is a special episode that we're going to be releasing Thursday, July 4th, to celebrate the 248th birthday of the United States of America, or at least the day we celebrate it with the Declaration of Independence. I'm your host, Stephen Long. We are coming to you once again from the worldwide headquarters of GSM Services, where we simply believe in discussing more of the reasons why Gaston's great. And we're going to, when I say special episode today, we're going to kind of celebrate one of the reasons why United States of America is great. Something that I've always wanted to do, and I've heard other people do it. And since I have the mic, this is what I'm going to do. We will actually do a reading of the Declaration of Independence. So if you don't want to hear this, it's going to be a super short episode, relatively speaking. So if you don't want to hear this, you might want to go listen to something else. However, we are going to read exactly how it was written back in 1776. And then I'll still have a book recommendation and a quote and thought for the week. But again, I just believe strongly that this is something that, I think more maybe Americans should read this or hear this, making sure I'm assuming this is something that our kids still see in school. I'm not even sure anymore. But again, I just think it's something that's super important. So here we go. In Congress, July 4, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitled them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shewn that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government, and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The system of the present King of Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object to the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent could be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together the legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly, for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative's power, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise. The state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has effected to render the military independent of and superior to the silver power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for courting large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit to the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coast, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince, whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant, is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connection and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce to the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America and General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Wow. I don't know that I've ever read that out loud. I've read it many times, but never out loud, and definitely not in front of a microphone. And for what it's worth, the three North Carolina delegates that signed the Declaration of Independence were William Hooper, John Penn, and Joseph Hughes. I would encourage you maybe to go do a little research on those three gentlemen as well. So there you have it as we celebrate July 4th, 2024, by just doing a reading of the Declaration of Independence from July 4th, 1776. It is, in my opinion, and I am obviously biased, but one of the greatest documents, in my opinion, ever written. And again, something I would think every American at some point should either read or heard it declared. And as usual, I'm going to give my own book recommendations and quote for the week. My book recommendation is obviously, both of these are going to be related. There's a great book by David McCullough, and it's just called 1776. If you haven't read it, I would encourage you strongly. David McCullough's got some terrific books, several of them about some of our founding fathers. But 1776 just details many of the big and important events from that year. And my quote or thought for the week comes from Thomas Jefferson. It's something that I share. If you follow me on social media, you'll see this, but I share this same quote every year, the week of July 4th. And he said, "The cost of freedom is eternal vigilance." I'm afraid that maybe we take for granted the freedoms that we have here in the United States. And hopefully that maybe as we go forward, we'll start to realize how precious these freedoms are. And we'll remember that, we do have to keep our eye on those freedoms and decisions and things that we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So I appreciate everybody taking the time to listen. If you didn't, sorry, this wasn't our usual podcast topic here at Gaston's Great. But as I said at the beginning, I do think we are very fortunate to live in the United States of America. And even with all of our faults, I still believe it's the greatest nation in the world, and maybe the greatest nation ever conceived, as the founding fathers, and we like to call this great experiment. So please share this one if you can, and continue to listen as we go forward. Our next episode next week, we'll be back to our normal highlight of a local organization. But again, hope everyone has a great July 4th and celebrate with family and friends in your community. And until the next one, thanks again for hanging out with us, and keep coming back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.